Next on the news, indictments in what's being called the deadliest smuggling incident in U.S. history amid growing concerns about a surge in migrants at the southern border. President Biden tests positive for COVID-19, what doctors are saying about his condition. Plus,
everything's up a lot, and it's really biting into the purchasing power of the typical family.
Rising inflation affecting families trying to get some back-to-school shopping done. We'll look at how parents should plan. And the football coach from St. Francis Prep who's swimming some dangerous waters, all to help his team. We'll talk with Coach Richard Carroll. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now. This was the deadliest human smuggling incident in U.S. history, and now we know who was behind it. 2 Texas natives indicted. The families of 53 migrants are now one step closer to justice. A United States grand jury indicted those 2 U.S. citizens in the truck smuggling operation that left dozens of migrants dead last month. If convicted, the men could face the death penalty. Yet, despite the threats, migrants just keep coming. And not just from Central America and Mexico, but from more than 100 different countries. That's something that hasn't been seen before. Mass migration is landing at the U.S. doorstep. With conditions getting worse in their countries of origin, migrants are arriving in droves, relieved as they cross the border. In this part of the border, U.S. authorities arrest up to 1,000 migrants daily. The influx is an alarming trend made even more difficult by the nationalities of the people crossing the border. Yuma Border Patrol Sector Chief Chris Clem described the situation as dynamic.
We were having countries from Mexico, Central America, things that we could process and take their biometric data and put them in removal proceedings and or return them back to Mexico. The countries we're receiving now, those nationalities are flying in, arriving to the border, and they're having to be processed, and there's just so many of them that it is posing a challenge to the workforce.
Authorities can turn back migrants at the southwest border back to Mexico or their home countries under a Trump-era pandemic rule known as Title 42, but it doesn't apply to everyone. That, coupled with frosty relations with countries like Venezuela and Cuba, keeps the U.S. from removing certain people, meaning they might be released while going through immigration proceedings.
We continue to evolve with technology and resources, not only for our agents, but also for the overall mission in the form of surveillance systems. And then we continue to add to the processing and the humane care and of the migrants in custody, wraparound medical services, food contracts to make sure that we've got plenty of food and to be able to take care of those in custody.
The pace of people journeying north presents a steep challenge for President Biden, and one he raised with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador last week.
One of those is migration, at historic levels throughout our hemisphere. Like us, Mexico has become a top destination of migrants.
The U.S. has looked to countries further south for help, including Costa Rica, where many migrants travel through. Meanwhile, in Yuma, Arizona, they expect in the coming days they'll reach 250,000 arrests. That's more than all of last year. Meanwhile, in New York City, the mayor is claiming that states like Arizona are busing those asylum seekers into the Big Apple, and that's why the city is seeing a surge in homelessness. He's calling on the White House for help after citing nearly 3,000 people entering the shelter population in the past 6 weeks. Let's take a closer look at those numbers. The Department of Homeless Services says on a recent night there were 48,188 people sleeping in shelters. That's up from about 45,000 3 months ago, according to the new figures. New York City is legally required to provide shelter to everyone who needs it. Sadly, many of those lives are in danger as this latest heat wave in parts of the U.S. is showing no mercy. Millions in New York and across the country are under heat advisories and excessive heat warnings. As Mike Valerio reports, the dangerous conditions are prompting health officials to declare a heat health emergency.
More than 100 million Americans are now under heat alerts from parts of the West to New England, a suffocating cocoon that experts say will become more common because of climate change. The message in Tulsa:
one of the big things that we want people to know is that heat is the #1 weather-related cause of death in the United States each year.
Philadelphia declared a heat health emergency for Thursday, with special field teams visiting homes, checking to make sure everybody's okay. In Texas, the Austin area reached at least 100 degrees for 38 out of the past 44 days.
You know, summers can be hot in Texas, but this is unlike anything that I've seen.
Temperatures over 90 are expected in New York City, Philly, and Boston through the weekend, if not longer. A heat emergency is now in effect for Washington, D.C.
It's a hot day, and it's a good time to come in the water.
Meantime, while the West is already parched, drought conditions worsened across the South and Midwest. Arkansas went from less than 1% to more than a quarter of the state in severe drought. In Missouri, it's up from 2% to more than a third in severe drought as flash drought quickly set in. Mike Valerio, Currents News.
If you can avoid the heat, then here are some tips for you. The first and foremost is, of course, to drink plenty of liquids. Dehydration is a leading cause of heat-related illnesses. Speaking of which, make sure you eat regular meals and snacks to replace the salt and electrolytes lost through sweating. And finally, try your best to stay indoors or in a shaded area from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., which is usually the hottest time of the day. And if you still need help, then Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens has your back. A number of their senior centers also serve as cooling centers. Just head online to ccbq.org/senior-centers to find one near you, or you can call them at 718-722-6001. Well, a local football coach is taking a cooling dip in the San Francisco Bay. St. Francis Prep coach Richard Carroll swimming for a good cause, coming up on Currents News.
The school in general is developing leaders, and one of the lessons that I'm trying to teach is to lead from the front.
The coach says he's decided to take on a 2-mile route through some dangerous waters to help out his students. He tells us more about what he's raising the funds for, plus how he's been preparing for the big swim, coming up on Currents News. House Democrats are protecting contraception. The new legislation, which passed the House on Thursday, would inscribe into law the right to contraception nationwide, giving the medical community the okay to provide them and cover any device or medication used to prevent pregnancy. Those include oral and emergency contraceptions, injections, and implants like IUDs. The measure will almost certainly fail in the evenly divided Senate. The Catholic Church condemns the use of unnatural methods of birth control. It's a stance that dates back to 1968 when Pope St. Paul VI wrote the encyclical Humanae Vitae. The papal paper taught about God's plan for marriage and the transmission of life, saying every marital act must of necessity retain its intrinsic relationship to the procreation of human life. But the church does approve of natural family planning as a way to avoid or achieve pregnancy. It was a pro-life attack against a church in Bethesda, Maryland. Now there's been an arrest in the case. A Montgomery County fire official says a juvenile has been arrested in connection with the arson and vandalism at both a Catholic and a Methodist church. The pastor of St. Jane Francis de Chantal Catholic Church told his parishioners that he believed the arson attack was aimed at the church because of its pro-life views. President Biden has tested positive for COVID-19, but doctors say he's only experiencing mild symptoms. The White House explained that the president has begun taking Paxlovid, an antiviral drug that's supposed to reduce the severity of COVID. Biden is now isolating himself at the White House while continuing to carry out all his duties. The president, who's 79 years old, is fully vaccinated and even received 2 booster shots. While masks may no longer be on your back-to-school shopping list, there are still a lot of things you have to buy to get your kids ready for the fall. But thanks to inflation, be prepared to dig deep. Jen Sullivan has tips to save parents from breaking the bank.
Scissors you have and glue.
The back-to-school shopping season is underway, and parents are facing higher prices for just about everything on their list amid looming recession fears and inflation reaching a 41-year high.
That's food prices, that's rent, and that's back to school supplies. So everything's up a lot, and it's really biting into the purchasing power of the typical family.
Meanwhile, a new National Retail Federation survey found 1/3 of consumers say they're spending less in other areas so they can pay for items their children need for school. Financial expert Julie Alma-Taveras says it's good that parents are prioritizing items for school and has these 3 tips to save money. The first step is to make a budget and stick with it. Next, take it slow. Some parents make the mistake of buying too much before school starts, only to find out that their children don't actually need it.
Don't worry about having a back-to-school haul. Don't worry about spending hundreds of dollars on clothes and hundreds of dollars of school supplies. Have a good understanding of what the needs are going to be for that semester or for that year, and take it slowly.
Also, involve the kids. Taveras recommends giving them a set amount and letting them shop with you. That way, it's a money lesson for them too, forcing them to prioritize what they really need.
Don't go too crazy with the stickers and the binders and all of those extra things, because a really important part of financial power and also teaching generational wealth is having these conversations.
I'm Jen Sullivan.
Speaking of back to school, some students in the Diocese of Brooklyn have already been back. Sort of. The newest so-called Stanners were welcomed to Archbishop Molloy High School with a fun summer camp. The week-long retreat at the Marist Brothers Center at Esopus allowed the incoming freshmen to meet and bond with their future classmates through sports, games, and crafts, and also strengthen their faith with Mass and an introduction to the Marist charism. The high school says the retreat was made possible through the faculty, alum, kitchen crew, and counselors. So congrats to the class of 2026 and have fun on your high school journey. New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is highlighting charity, reminding his hundreds of thousands of Twitter followers that charity is one of the 3 theological virtues that is given to us from God.
The 3 most important virtues are faith, hope, and charity. We call them the 3 theological virtues. You can't earn them. They're given to us in the sacrament of baptism. Their power in our lives can be increased by practicing them, by asking for them in prayer. But those 3 theological virtues, faith, we believe in the one true God. Hope, we believe that this one true God has made promises and keeps them. And love, or charity, this one true God loves us passionately and personally, wants us to love him back, and wants us to love one another.
Cardinal Dolan also said a virtuous life is a life well lived. There's a lot more news headed your way. He'll be swimming in waters with sharks and strong currents. Next, the length the St. Francis Prep football coach is going, all to help his own team. Also, another shark attack off of a New York beach. We'll tell you just how many we're up to now this summer. And it was a fishing trip gone horribly wrong. We'll see who came to the rescue of a kayaker who started sinking.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
We are all trying to beat the heat this summer, taking a trip to the beach or a dip in the pool. But a St. Francis Prep football coach is swimming for a good cause. Coach Richard Carroll is raising money for a new portable scoreboard for the Catholic high school, and he's doing it by swimming in shark-infested waters. I asked Coach Carroll what his biggest fears were ahead of his plunge into San Francisco Bay.
You know, my biggest fear is really the time component, because they actually put a time limit on it. It isn't technically a race. It is a swim, an event. And you have 75 minutes to accomplish the 2-mile swim. And then with the currents, and obviously they're fearful of the sharks. That's always a big thing, especially, you know, here in New York, we're having a lot of issues with sharks. You always keep that in the back of your head for sure.
Yeah, I'm scared just thinking about it. I know it's the Alcatraz Shark Fest swim, so even the name of it makes me nervous. So you jump in on August 7th. Are you a swimmer? How have you been preparing?
3 years ago, I had a complete total knee replacement. And while doing my physical therapy, I asked for advice on what I can do to stay active. And the physical therapist actually said swimming would be a great way of staying in shape and working yourself. And as a former swimmer in high school, I was on the high school swim team at St. Francis Prep. Correct.
Best high school.
I jumped all over it and said, you know, this is going to be something I get into. And sure enough, while I was working at swimming, this challenge popped up.
Okay, and I know there's a reason for this. You've been with the football program for 20 years. You're a graduate of Prep, as am I. I know you're trying to raise money, so why take on this challenge?
Well, number one, it started out just as a bucket list thing, just to, you know, swim Alcatraz. That's one of the greatest swims anywhere. To be able to do that, and, you know, that was the number one challenge. But to be able to piggyback on a fundraiser to help the program, the football program, it's really the sports program, because we're looking to raise funds to put a scoreboard down at the field where we play baseball, soccer, lacrosse, a lot of different sports are being played down there, and there's no scoreboard. So that's why we put this all together.
So everybody benefits, and you're trying to raise $10,000, but I think you've already hit that mark. Tell me about the response from the Prep alumni.
You know, the Prep alumni never fail to really step up. It's, you know, the school in general is developing leaders, and one of the lessons that I'm trying to teach is to lead from the front. So when we put a call out there that something's needed for our present students, for the current Terriers, it's amazing at the feedback we get, and the contribution and the participation that we get from our alumni is really second to none.
That was St. Francis Prep football coach Richard Carroll. Now, if you'd like to donate to Coach Carroll's efforts, just search on Facebook for Coach Carroll's Alcatraz Swim for Friends of SFP Football. Good luck to him. A teenage surfer is the latest victim of a shark attack in the waters off Long Island. The 16-year-old boy was bitten about 20 yards out from Kismet Beach on Fire Island. He was able to walk out of the water and was taken to Good Samaritan Hospital in West Islip for treatment. This is the 6th shark attack reported across Long Island since June 30th. Experts say the sharks have been moving closer to shore because of the warmer and cleaner waters and an abundance of bunker fish. In response, Governor Kathy Hochul is ramping up patrols at Long Island beaches in hopes of identifying sharks before they attack. The plan is to increase overtime for lifeguards by 25% and to add drone and helicopter patrols at state beaches. But even with the extra surveillance, state officials are advising beachgoers to avoid areas with bait fish that attract sharks and not to swim near fishermen. Some good advice. A kayaker in Florida was out for a short fishing trip, and he wound up getting stranded at sea. He started to sink, and he says he didn't think he was going to make it until he saw a passing boat. Tara Jakeway has the details and the rescue video that's now gone viral.
As I ran out of energy and as the storm kicked up, it just got worse and worse and worse, and basically I had to let go of like every worldly possession.
Davey Wright's kayak, loaded with fishing equipment, started taking on water at around 11 p.m. June 27th. Alone 2 miles out in the pitch black, he was sinking faster than he could paddle.
I realize I'm in a horrible situation. There's feeding going on. At this point, we're at mid-outgoing tide. And of course, oh yeah, shoals, oh yeah, heavy bull sharks.
Stuck without a clear path through the schools of bait, Wright's training as a Brown Beret with the United States Army kicked in.
Super
cold,
you know, teeth chattering, muscle lock. That happened hours ago. So hypothermia, pre-hypothermia, hypothermia.
5 hours later, disoriented and dehydrated, he said he had made peace with dying at sea. Seconds later, he spotted a boat bow, and with all his energy, he called out his last shot in the dark.
I was screaming, "Mayday, Mayday, I'm a fisherman in the water, I have no vessel."
By some miracle, that vessel turned around.
I started panning the water, and I saw like a brown puffy jacket. And just 2 hands sticking out of the water.
The captain threw a life sling to Wright and hoisted him to the swim platform, then grabbed his phone and videoed the surreal moment.
Kayak went down. It was just wrong place, wrong time, and then a lifeline through someone that was receptive to be there.
And wasn't even supposed to be there, but a mechanical issue delayed Cornick's trip, putting him at sea hours later than planned.
I had no business being out there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
It was some sort of universal communication, that's all I could say.
Communication that kept him alive.
I know I saw that he was going to die if I didn't keep him talking.
The captain got him back to the dock in Fort Pierce. Days later, this reunion happened. A brand new friendship forged at sea.
You're my guardian angel, Tom. I thank God that you were there.
Wow, what a story. That was Tara Jakeway reporting. And if that wasn't enough, the duo are now planning a business venture together to teach people about safety while at sea. Still to come on Currents News, of course, it's the perfect time for the beach, and Pope Francis has an important summer reading recommendation for the faithful. And they are some well-known ancient Roman baths, but now there's something distinctly different at the site in Rome. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. Summer is in full swing, and Pope Francis has a book recommendation for you, the Bible. Last Sunday, the Holy Father commented on how difficult it is to find time to meditate nowadays. So he's calling on the faithful to start their days off reading the Gospel. Francis says that even a short passage from the Bible can be an inspiration for the entire day. And finally tonight, they're one of the most well-known examples of ancient Roman baths. But now visitors at the Baths of Karakala will get to see what existed at the ancient site before they were built. Justin McClellan has the details.
To build the Baths of Karakala in the 3rd century AD, land had to be confiscated and houses had to be demolished. However, not everything was destroyed. Some things survived. These are frescoes found in the house of an upper-class citizen. The person's social status is evident from the colors used, which were some of the most expensive.
The Great Baths in Rome are an incredible public work created to give free access to all citizens, and therefore in order to build this great work, they had to sacrifice parts of private land.
Now, the most interesting part of this house that can be visited in the Baths of Karakala is this room. The owner had dedicated it to the different gods he venerated. It would be the equivalent of a private chapel in Christian culture. However, this room is unique, as both Greco-Roman and Egyptian divinities are seen together. Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva on one hand, and Isis, Osiris, and Anubis on the other.
A few of the gods are represented in their full size. They're very large, and they're all mixed together. It is an example of explicit religious content without symbols, but using the real gods, and it's very unique. And the exceptional thing about these paintings is that we see how two different religions coexist in the same house, which testifies to the religious openness that existed in the Roman world. We do not know if the owner of the house was Roman or Egyptian, but in his house, he decided to put different divinities in the same room.
This is key to understanding the reason for the persecution of Christians. The monotheistic nature of Jesus' followers did not allow for the existence of other gods, which led to problems with the Romans. For example, they rejected the divinity of the emperors. But in this house, gods of varying religions were kept together. In Rome, new excavations are constantly being discovered and open to the public. More than simply unearthing old buildings, these findings open a window to the past that reveal how Christianity survived in the polytheistic Roman world.
That was Justin McClellan reporting, and you too can see the ancient home. The exhibit called Before the Baths, the house where gods live together, is now a permanent part of the site. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.